Buenos dias, Gunners Collective TV. Back at it? You already know. Like a torta with a bad habit. Bye, bye. They got some bad habits too. Let's get to the intro. Welcome back to Gunners Collective TV. And if you haven't already hit that like and subscribe button, make sure you go ahead and do that. Put them notification bells on all, so that way you're directed in the direction of the dope content that the gun stays kicking, man. I appreciate all the support. I'm very humbled by it. So I got asked a question. So let's get to it. Who's catching more bodies? Is it the SNY yards? If they even have SNY yards still. I heard they were called non-designated yards, but we'll use SNY, the SNY title, for content purposes. And then, of course, the general population yards. Now, I've been watching the tally. I've been watching who's doing what and who's doing more. Unfortunately, I'm not trying to play with anyone's lives. I don't take lives easy, okay? I take them seriously. And it's unfortunate that the California Department of Corrections is off the hook. In fact, it's so off the hook that at this point in time, in this era, right now, is probably the worst I've seen it since back in the days when gangs were establishing the yard. I mean, it's crazy right now. It's ridiculous in the amount of bloodshed that's happening. The amount of people getting eradicated off the yard is crazy. And it can only be for one or two things, one or two reasons. One, because they are bringing these guys together from the general population and these non-designated yards together on these yards. Of course, there's going to be chaos. We all seen it coming. Or it could be there's just a lot more trash on these yards, and these guys are realizing, hey, we got to get rid of everything and start from A, because we're at Z right now. Now, who do you think's been doing more murders on the yards? General population or the SNY yard? I'm here to tell you, it's the SNY yards. And I'll explain to you why. And there's no competition there. It's not like they're in a horse race. You know, it's not like GP even focuses on what's going on in the SNY and vice versa. They're not tripping on, oh, they got one, we got to get one. There's no competition, nothing like that. It's more so on the SNY yards. The reason why you're going to see more murders occur with less people doing them. And so let me explain to you. On a GP yard, when you see someone get folded up off the yard, someone gets hit, someone gets whacked, right? Whatever you want to call it, removed. Usually, depending upon the group, there's anywhere from 2 to 3 to 4 individuals doing it. So anytime I see a murder that happens, I usually look at the picture of the guy who got killed, and I pretty much can tell the reasoning behind it. You know, if he's not in on a bad charge, then more than likely he was a gang member that fucked up somewhere along the way. You know, he might not necessarily have bad charges, but he done something politically that was against the grain, and he had to go. We just had the one that happened in Salinas Valley, where it was 2 Northerners on 1. Okay. This is usually how it goes. I know when I played the game and I was active, you know, there were squads, there were people that anytime something had to get handled of that nature, they raised their hands, they went out there and they handled it. And it was never a one-on-one situation unless it was like your cellie, or that was the only way you can get to this individual in the whole administrative segregation, something like that. But usually there's going to be a team on you, because if you got to go, they want to make sure you go. Okay, not just sliced up or stabbed. If you notice with the Norteños doing the removals that they've been doing, if you've noticed, no one's been getting sliced up. There's no more whacking people. Now it's straight steel. Now it's straight, get them off the yard, life flight them up out of here. They got to go. And they use several individuals on GP to do this. And it's all for safety and security. You know, you don't want that other guy taking the knife away from a young hitter that doesn't know better, is not seasoned, doesn't have a lot of pegadas under his belt. And you definitely don't want that dude leaving that yard with his head held high. It should be the other way around, right? So when you look at the general population killings, you got guys, they're doing it in groups. Now, flip side, the SNY yard, Usually when you see murders that happen, it's one-on-one. It's usually one guy targets another individual for whatever. Now, here's the difference between the GP and the SNY. On the GP side, you're not just stabbing anybody without going through who you're going through. There's definitely a chain of command in all groups. You know, unless it's some spur of the moment disrespect shit where you have to pull your piece out and get busy right there, 9 times out of 10, you're definitely going through your channels, you're going to your people, and it's something that's spoken on before and then it gets handled. And that's why it gets handled in the way it does. Knives get secured, knives go out to the yard if they're not already out there. The shit goes down, or it happens in a day room or in a shower area, or, you know, most likely it's a common area where you can get to them, or they run up in a cell, or however they do it. But then it's a group. On the SNY side, it's different. It kind of reminds me of the Youth Authority, YA. Let me explain to you. When I was doing YA time in the California Youth Authority, man, that right there was gladiator school. That right there, you didn't have to tell your own people what you were going to do. There was a little politicking going on, what we thought was politicking at that time. We were young kids, right? But if you didn't like someone, you went and tested their gangster. You tested their chin. If you decided to use a weapon, whether it was a battery pack, a knife, or any other improvised weapon, you were able to do that. So what? The worst that was going to happen was it was going to kick off. A riot was going to kick off. A melee was going to kick off, and everybody was going to get at everybody. Eventually, it would die down, and whoever got bodied or whoever got poked, he was out of there. You went to the oil, did a little time, and came right back to the yard to do another thing. It was really nothing. Okay, there was very, very few people being charged, unless it was a murder. There was very few murders, though. But there was very few people being charged outside, meaning they didn't catch more charges. It was just an in-house stabbing or battery packing, and that was that. But the whole concept was it was Wild Wild West. You didn't have to ask anybody. If you felt disrespected or someone was from a different body or they were an enemy or you didn't like them, then you can get off where you were mad at. I seen it more in Preston and Nellis than anywhere else. Carl Holton was more of a programming yard. It didn't go down like that. You'd have some fist fights, a few stomp outs, but nothing really major. Couple stabbings I've seen, but nothing real dangerous. But in Nellis, Basel, TS, Chad, Preston, sometimes even DeWitt Nelson every once in a while, right? You would have some big things going down. Now, that reminds me of the SNY yards, because in the SNY yards, you have guys, because they are not associated with gangs, or you guys have guys that are associated with dropout gangs, they feel that they don't have to answer or ask anyone anything. Now, if you look on the thumbnail, you see a guy. He has an 18 on his cheek. No disrespect to 18th Street, respects. This individual had a bad charge, and he landed in Lancaster on an SNY yard and was gone. Life flighted up out of there, killed right in the day room, right? You know, there's a lot of people that think that because you go to a SNY yard or a non-active yard or a non-designated yard or whatever type of yards, whatever names they're giving them now, that you can just go over there and it doesn't matter if you have bad charges because dudes are dropout gang members that they're not going to get at you. That's furthest from the truth. In fact, them SNY yards are more dangerous than the GP yards. And I'm going to explain to you. They are going to send dudes with bad charges, snitches, rats, grapers, pedophiles. They're going to send all these guys to them yards. And there's dudes there that are maybe ex-gang members or they're part of a dropout gang or whatever. Just some regular dudes that ain't putting up with that shit. They're not going to program nor function with these type of individuals. And especially you got guys that are from certain barrios, that were from barrios, right? That still got that love for their hood. They still got that love for their city. And if someone comes from their city, comes from their neighborhood, comes from what they used to be, they're feeling some type of way. They feel like it's up to them to handle business. Now, that's not mandatory. They're not obligated to kill a fucking chomo on the yard. None of that. There's no one telling them they have to, but then there's no one telling them they can't. And that's the number one thing. And that's why you see several murders occur on the SNY yards. You know, and there's this myth or this philosophy that's out there that once you go to an SNY yard or a non-active yard, that it's just a bunch of fucking suckers running around hugging on each other. That's not the case. Not even close, right? It's more YA mentality, only not children anymore. So they're playing for keeps. You have a lot of dudes that are doing life without the possibility on these SNY yards. You have a lot of guys that are doing 30, 40, 50, 60 years that don't care. Then you have a lot of youngsters that get over there and all of a sudden want to start really gangbanging without being told how to do it. So they're willing to make the necessary sacrifices they feel for what's going to put them on the map in their new gang. You got guys like Cody Taylor, right? Cody Taylor is an anomaly. That dude right there is from Southern California, the 805, who never ran with the Southerners. He ran with whites, okay? Had affiliation with Southsiders, but never ran with them. Gets locked up throughout the system. Somewhere along the line, finds himself on the SNY side, joins up with Nuestra Cosa, which is an offshoot of the Northern Riders, and starts catching body after body because he feels now that he had made it, that he's a mobster, that he achieved, I guess, the status he was looking for. Some people call him a J-Cat. I've talked to people that were actually done time with them in the 805 in the county jail, and they said he was nothing like the way he portrays himself to be. But one thing he is for sure is a killer. He has it in him to do that. And he developed that killer instinct on them SNY yards. So there's a lot of dudes running around like that catching bodies. Now, on the flip side, general population, it's more about respect. The attitude there is very structured. No one's going to put hands or touch anyone or disrespect anyone without the green light, without being able to do that. You're going to have to answer for every move you make because that's the way the organizations want it to be, right? That's the way it should be. All about respect. Now, on them SNY yards, they're not doing that. So, yes, there's going to be a lot of bodies cut. So I've been keeping up with it like, man, who's killing who more? And not that it matters because death is, man, death is not the way. There's other ways to deal with things. But, you know, when you're in an extreme environment like the California prison system or any prison system, then extreme measures need to be taken. Now, this guy with this 18 on his face that got killed, you know, I don't know how long he was there in that particular yard before he was got at, but somewhere along the line, someone realized that he had a forcible grape on his jacket, that he was not everything that he seems he was, right? And a guy took the initiative and took it upon himself to handle his business and to get rid of him. Now, it trips me out that some dudes will survive. Some dudes will go to those yards with bad charges and they're able to fly under the radar and no one fucks with them. Maybe they're paying what they're weighing. I don't know. But at the end of the day, it's not the same for everyone. Okay, whereas in GP it is. In GP, you're going to follow the politics of your people, depending upon who you're from. And if you try to color outside them lines, your Crayola crayon's going to get broke. Straight up. You cannot go against the grain. You definitely don't want to be the one that's boisterous and loud. The loudest one in the room is always the one that gets hit first. Okay, one thing I knew about when I was on the general population yard was my people were there to establish a yard. That was my sole purpose. My purpose was not to disrespect the opposition. It was not to go out on the yard and get involved in drugs and drinking and act the fool and gambling. My whole life and the safety and security of my life depended upon establishing my people. I was willing to make the ultimate sacrifice if it benefited the people, which was the Norteños at that time, right? I had no animosity towards Southsiders, towards Woods, skinheads. You know, I knew better than to go on their side of the yard. I knew enough to keep my peace on me. I knew enough to stay aware at all times. If I seen them with any hand gestures or movements or being real quiet, I knew something was popping up. I was seasoned enough to understand these things, but I knew my whole goal in life was to maintain the integrity of my people and to establish wherever I needed to establish. And that meant to do whatever I had to do. You know, ultimately, I was never put in a situation where I had to kill someone on a yard. Removals, sometimes you got to go. I come from a different era when the slicing and dicing was real, right? Nowadays, it's all about metal play. Now they're putting iron in you, which has always been the Southsiders' philosophy. That's a difference between North and South. Northerners wanted to whack you. They'll hit you, but they were into whacking you, leaving your shit flapped up. I remember that. Southsiders never been into that. In fact, you know, Southsiders had an arrogance to them. And one of the things that I remember talking to a Southsider in the oil, and what he used to say was that if them guys used a razor blade, I mean, if they could get their hands, that's all they can get their hands on, then they're going to utilize whatever they could. But if that's all that they could use or all that they could do when they had iron present, then that was a cowardice move. They were looked at like, hey, come on, bro. You got to put metal in that motherfucker. That's it. But right now in the CDC, we're seeing more deaths than ever. And I've been noticing, like I said, the SNY Yard, they're hitting dudes probably 2-1 than GP. And, you know, you hear these stories, man, oh, general population is going to go crazy. As soon as they start integrating people, people are going to get off. They've been doing this. This has been going on for years now. And I'm not saying they're not handling their business, because I'm sure there's a lot of isolated incidences where fools get hit we just don't hear about. Doesn't make the news, right? But what does make the news is ultimately when someone dies. Now, I'm not going to say, oh, they'll hit you harder on this yard or they'll hit you hard on that yard. Men are men. Convicts are convicts. Doesn't matter what side of the game you're on, what side of the fence or the yard. You know, if someone has a knife and he's willing to use it, he's going to use it just like he would do on GP, just like he would do on SNY. Those dudes, not everyone could do what they do. You know, there's some guys that lose their way. They get what we call the black eye. You know, they're hopeless and they turn into a monster. I've seen men turn into monsters in there. I've seen individuals put in situations where they had no choice. You know, I told a story a while back. There was a young kid from Stockton, 19, 20 years old, was in on a GTA and a burglary, and he was doing chicken shit time. He had a few years. He was probably going to go to a level 1, level 2, very chicken shit time. And we were in Tracy, DVI. And so they would bring you down when you had like medical, they draw blood, because that's what they do in reception. That's where they draw blood. They make sure you ain't got the shit and everything is good. And then at the same time, the counselors are trying to figure out your points and where they're going to send you. So you're sitting there in lieu waiting to get to a main line, just like Cain Velasquez went from, you know, Wasco to Soledad. You know, he had to go through the reception. He went faster than I thought. But most of the time, you're sitting there for a month to 3 months to 6 months, depending upon your points and your level. And this youngster was well on his way to 2 yard. I remember running into him, chopping it up with them right there in the medical. They had us like all in this little, tiny little yard, man. It was me, homeboy boy from Gilas, this dude, a couple other dudes. And we're chopping it up. And I remember, man, these Northern Riders walked by, man. They were talking that high power shit. They were in cuffs. This is back in the days when, in Tracy, when Northerners were free to walk and the SNY side were in cuffs. It reversed later on. The next time I went back for a violation, the SNY side was so deep, they were walking around without cuffs, and the fucking actors were being escorted, the general population with cuffs. Trip out on that, right? So anyways, this youngster, I remember talking to me, had a good head on his shoulders. He was making, you know, out there criminal, doing bad stuff, but he wasn't a bad kid. And he was on my building, but I had never met him. And I remember I'd seen his name on the roster, but I just never ran into him. And so I was telling him, hey, yeah, bro, you're going to go to a level 2. It's going to be lovely. You're going to go over there with the homies, this, and that. You know, I had never been to a level 2, but I'm giving him game. And that was that. A couple weeks later, man, he got involved in a pegada. He got kind of not pressured into it, but, you know, hey, your hands got to be raised. His number came up, and ultimately someone died behind that, right? And I remember I was very upset. I was upset more on the personal tip that this dude right here was going to get X'd out for the rest of his life. He's going to catch a charge, and that was that. And I was upset on the reasoning behind the removal, but I understood it was what it was. I wasn't in control. I had no say-so. I had to roll with the flow. That's how it goes. So in the general population yard, you'll see bodies, but you won't see as many because there's a lot of hoops and things that you have to go through, a lot of politics that you have to, there's got to be a lot of conversation before anyone just dies, unless it's something that cracks off and it has to be handled ASAP. Whereas on the SNY side, you're not going to have that. You don't have to go ask anyone anything. You know, if you're a part of the little prison gangs or whatever they got going on there, the little SNY gangs or whatever groups, you know, the 2-5ers, the Riders, all these different groups, then of course, I'm sure there's a little structure to what they got going on and they discuss their things, obviously, right? But anyone else who's just a prisoner or a convict doing time over there, if a chomo gets put in his cell and he wants to hit him, he doesn't have to ask the blacks or the whites or the browns. He doesn't have to do that. He just does it. So right now, from what I've been seeing in the CDC, and it's a lot of chaos, and it's created chaos. Let me say that. I think it's created chaos by the administration because they don't like this end of hostilities. They are upset and they want to reopen the shoes. And I think, I hate to say it, man, but I think it's pretty obvious right now because of all the bloodshed and it's working right into their greasy palms that eventually the shoes will be reopened. You know, the validation process will continue and guys will be slammed back. Hopefully not the indeterminates, but one never knows, does one, man. When you keep getting blood on your hands, they're going to have to put you somewhere. It's not working out on the yards, right? And now you have the SNY yards going crazy and going off. they're going to have to figure some out where to put these guys. So right now, man, what's more dangerous in prison? Well, prison period is dangerous. Doesn't matter what yard you go to. It's all about how you run your program and what, you know, how it's dictated to you. But from what I'm seeing, man, the SNYs are 2-1 on the bodies, man, and it's a trip. With that being said, not trying to glorify it, I'm trying to tell you, man, think about what you're doing when you're taking a penitentiary chance. If you're a youngster right now and you're a part of a gang and you're doing your thing, look, man, I'm not poisoning your mentality. Go do what you got to do. I did. But at the same time, let me explain this to you as point blank as I can. Here's some knowledge you can't get in college. Just because you go to prison with 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, shit, that doesn't mean you're coming home in them years. That doesn't mean you're coming home at all. In this era, shit, it's not even a 50-50 anymore. It's worse than that. The gun.